Hey everyone, it's Kristan Hawkins. Sorry, I do not have makeup or hair on. It was a late night and I had to wake up early this morning and take my dad to have a small surgical procedure done. So I'm at my parents' house. I'm actually in the bedroom I grew up in, believe it or not. I've got the door locked, so hopefully no kids come in, but wanted to go through some of the election results from last night. Just for some of you people in Michigan who are upset, I have a puppy here. See, Rosie, just to cheer you up. I brought her on just for you. What we're going to hear today, I think President Biden's getting ready to talk in a couple of hours, is that this was a victory for Democrats. It definitely was not. More than $400 million was spent by Democrats, by pro-abortion forces in key races for this election to try to gaslight Americans into believing that disposing of an inconvenient child through abortion was a good. And that's not what happened. We wake up today in America that's pretty much largely the same than the one we woke up in yesterday. The only thing that's really changed is now the House of Representatives is going to be under Republican control, meaning we can force President Biden to have to choose whether or not he wants to fund his pals at Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion vendor, or keep the entire federal government going. Stay tuned for that fight. But I want to go through some of the races, some of the things you're seeing. I think it's very good to keep perspective about the money, how much we were outspent. Immediately after Roe fell, we were told this was going to be a massive blue wave. There was nothing we could do. Throughout the summer and even through most of the fall, many GOP pundits, experts, GOP leaders were telling candidates to run away from their pro-life beliefs, something that myself, Marjorie Danfelser, SBA, Pro-Life America, and other leaders warned against and begged, candidates not to do, because we know 8 out of 10, even some polls show 9 out of 10 of Americans agree with us on common sense restrictions against abortion. So most folks, no matter what they call themselves, pro-life or pro-choice, are actually closer in line with us than they are with Democrats. However, when Republicans fail to talk about these issues, we have massive problems. And I think we started to see those problems tonight. I think some of these races actually showed, and we saw, candidates who are outspoken, boldly pro-life, 100% pro-life, fared a lot better than some of those who were kind of squeamish about their pro-life beliefs or ran away from their pro-life beliefs. One thing is very much for certain: there are going to be more elected officials than ever returning to Washington D.C. and state houses who have pledged to Students for Life Action, through our surveys, who've pledged throughout the movement that they are 100% pro-life. This is significant. This is a narrative you're not going to hear the media talk about. The fact that what we did, Students for Life, while engaging in U.S. Senate races for sure, we focused our entire election strategy on state house races, knowing that this is where, in a post-Roe America, the battle has shifted to. And we actually saw some really good outcomes. Before I get to that, I want to remind everybody, we're going to have a webcast tonight, 8 o'clock. It's a 2022 election recap. I'll be on it. Maybe Rosie will as well. We'll see. And some of our team members at Students for Life Action, you can go to studentsforlifeaction.org/election recap webinar and sign up. It's an off-the-record type of deal, so you've got to sign up. It's studentsforlifeaction.org/election recap webinar. It'll be at 8 o'clock tonight, Wednesday. We're going to go over all this in detail because I'm going to go through it fast because I have kids here and who knows what's going to happen. But the House races I really want to talk about. So I've already talked about the win in the U.S. House, how Republicans, pro-lifers have control of the U.S. House. Next, I want to talk about the state House races. These are battles that you're not going to hear talked about, but these are the battles that Students for Life created our entire election strategy around. This is why Students for Life leaders are like, why am I going to Nebraska to knock on doors when everyone's talking about Georgia? The reason we went to Nebraska was this legislative session before Roe fell. We tried to pass a protective law in Nebraska to make abortions illegal that would put the infamous late-term abortionist Leroy Carhart out of business, and it failed because of a Democratic legislator who was on the board of her local Planned Parenthood. Her political career ended last night. And so did a lot of other pro-abortion Democrats. We now have a filibuster-proof majority in the state of Nebraska, meaning Leroy Carhart needs to put his abortion business for sale now in Nebraska and leave the state forever. I mean, real estate is terrible right now. It's going to take him forever to sell his abortion business. So he just needs to do it now. In North Carolina, so not only do we see a 100% pro-life, life at conception co-sponsor, U.S. Congressman Ted Budd become now going to be the U.S. Senator, we also saw the Supreme Court flip from a 4-2 liberal to conservative majority to 5-2 conservative. That is huge. We now have a veto-proof Senate in North Carolina, and I think we're one vote away from a veto-proof House, and there's still some races yet to be called, and there are some moderate Democrats who we think we can get to join with us. Why is it significant? Because North Carolina has a pro-abortion extremist Democratic governor. North Carolina has a law allowing abortions up to 24 weeks and hasn't even been enforcing that law since Roe fell. And abortions have increased in North Carolina. So you can bet your bottom dollar we're going to be in North Carolina demanding that the state house pass protective measures to ban abortion, prevent abortion, protect mothers, and actually enforce those laws. Rosie's getting bored with me. I'm going to put her down. So that was significant. And if you have the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court will uphold those laws. In Ohio, many people don't know this, the Ohio heartbeat ban that Christina Hagan, our Students for Life Action board member, actually championed and sponsored and introduced when she was in the House there. That law was passed, but it's been enjoined by the state Supreme Court. Yesterday, the state Supreme Court flipped in Ohio to Republican, meaning that heartbeat law will be able to go into effect. Thousands of lives will be saved. I'm not even going to get into the races in Wyoming, the fact that we couldn't get the legislation we needed passed in Wyoming the past 2 legislative sessions. Some SFLA alumni won. We saw some significant victories there. In Pennsylvania in the state house, we saw some significant victories. We've been engaging in Pennsylvania to try to get the University of Pittsburgh to be held accountable for their atrocious practices of committing research and dismembering babies while they're still alive. And they're still getting taxpayer funds. So we saw a significant increase in there by alumni. Students for Life alumni won in Indiana, big, and it was by like 1,200 votes. We knocked on like 4,000 doors in that district. That's going to be significant because, as you all remember from the summer special sessions, we passed a law in Indiana, but it wasn't as good as it really could have been. We knew we need to go back. So we have a lot to do, obviously, the spring semester, I talk in Students for Life terms, the spring legislative session, but we've made some significant headway and it's going to help us in a big way when we go back to these representatives in the state houses. So that's great. So we've made significant progress in state houses, which you're not going to hear about on Fox News or on the mainstream media. But I'm telling you now, this is what our entire election strategy was based upon at Students for Life Action. We didn't have tens of millions of dollars. So we had to be very smart and precise about where we were going to put our money, where we wanted to see pro-life students engage. And that's exactly what happened because the Pro-Life Generation is awesome. More than 1,000 pro-life student leaders signed up, volunteered with Students for Life Action throughout this election season. And that's not even counting all of the hundreds of student pro-life leaders that worked with our friends at Susan B. Anthony List or with other campaigns. We're actually going to be sponsoring a contest where if you worked with other groups to tell us what you did so we can collectively figure out how much the Pro-Life Generation did this election cycle, and you'll get like free t-shirts and merch and tickets to the National Pro-Life Summit. By the way, you sign up for the National Pro-Life Summit, prolifesummit.org, day after the March for Life. It's going to be major. So that's a win. Where we didn't fare so well was the state referendums. We've been saying this over and over again. State referendums are not a good use of our money. We at Students for Life Action didn't put a lot of money into the Michigan or California or Vermont state referendum because we knew the outcomes weren't going to favor us very well. The people that really win at these state referendums are usually the people who make the ads, print the signs, do all the ad buys. That is the sad brass tacks of safe referendums. We should not be encouraging offensive referendums. California and Michigan were different because they were defensive, right? The abortion industry brought those referendums. Like I said, we weren't majorly involved. I know there's always mass confusion. I saw some of the ads in Michigan. I was just there not long ago. Tons of lies. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised. Those people who advocate for ending human life are lying about what a referendum is going to do in their state. I think what we're going to see is a lot of buyer's remorse once people really find out what it is they voted for. Because we know from the polling, majority of Americans are with us. But when it came to the state house, it came to these referendums, it was quite different. And to be honest, sometimes Goliath wins. I mean, these fights really came down to money. They came down to media power, and neither one of those things were on our side. So sometimes Goliath wins, guys. And so we're going to have a lot of work to do when it comes to referendums, stopping these referendums from even taking place in the first place, but then really being on the defensive when they are introduced. So those are some of my thoughts. There is so much that I can talk about. Like, I just want to recap. We're going to have more 100% pro-life state house officials and federal officials than we've ever had before who are sworn in this January. The Democrats spent more than $400 million trying to convince Americans to bring on the blue wave and that abortion was a good. That didn't happen. We're largely in the exact same spot we were yesterday. Except we now control the U.S. House of Representatives, meaning we can force, we can force a vote on defunding Planned Parenthood. We can get Democrats in the Senate to be held accountable for their abortion extremism. I encourage you to tune into our Student Life Action election recap. It's going to be tonight, 8 p.m. You can go to studentlifeaction.org/election recap webinar to sign up. It's an off the record thing. We'll get all the up-to-date information. We know votes are still coming in from Arizona and Nevada. Looks like we'll probably be going to Georgia for some runoff door knocking the first weekend in December. So if you're up for a trip to Georgia, make sure you email our team at Students for Life Action. Go to studentsforlifeaction.org and click the Get Involved button and tell us that you want to get involved, because we're going to be looking for some amazing folks who want to join us there. But it's not all bad. Folks are like, really, I think, down about last night. I was actually very pleasantly surprised as to considering how much we were outspent, considering the fact in July that every pollster, every pundit in America said there was going to be this massive blue wave, to wake up in America where we know at least we have the House of Representatives, we could gain the U.S. Senate, and we've had significant state house victories that are going to yield tens of thousands of lives saved. I would say last night was a win, with some challenges that we know we're going to have. But look, we know this is not going to be a quick fight. We are only a mere couple months away from the reversal of Roe versus Wade. Massive cultural change doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And so there's going to be a lot we need to do, in the coming years. But guess what? We're ready for it. The Pro-Life Gen is ready for this moment. We've been building for this moment. So do not despair. Take heart knowing you are part of the world's largest human rights movement, and we're going to save lives.